Hi everyone, I can see people are creeping in. I'll just give it a second until everyone's joined and then we'll kick off. Hi everyone, I'm Laura Scott, a consultant at PA Consulting, and welcome to our seventh in a series of PA's business psychology events. In these events, we look at some of the biggest trends and challenges that businesses currently face through the lens of psychology. Today's event is about human-centered AI, and before I pass on to Adam Bertelson, who's our compare for today, I'll just firstly note that the session will be recorded for those who've missed it, and then you're also very welcome to ask the panel questions in the QA function, and we'll try to get through as many as we can before the end of the session. And without further ado, over to Adam for introductions.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you and the wider team for setting this all up. A few words about me to begin. As PA's human-centered AI lead, I advise our clients on how to reimagine their workforce strategy and accelerate the responsible adoption of AI. For more than a decade, my career has focused extensively on embedding emerging technologies, designing new working practices, and upskilling workforces in large, complex organizations from sectors as diverse as financial services, policing, and transport. I'll briefly set the scene for our discussion today before introducing our panel. Everyone on this call is hopefully broadly aware and familiar with the advance of generative AI technologies such as ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot, which have been continuing to provide headline news throughout the last year. And in just the last 24 hours, quite topically, news sites have been reporting the IMF's recent research, which is saying that 40% of all jobs globally will be impacted significantly by AI, with advanced economies seeing an impact close to 60% of the workforce. So there is a growing recognition that leaders are starting to make decisions now to redesign their organizations, which will affect the future of work as we know it. And in parallel, the actual development, piloting, and adoption of new AI tools has been rapid. However, in the conversations that we're having with our clients, many organizations we find are experiencing the biggest challenge around AI to be more around understanding and managing the people impact rather than the technology itself. And beyond concerns for jobs, this includes the ethical usage of AI, the support and skills that people require to use such tools effectively, and to mitigate risks like hallucinations. So in this session today, we'll be discussing the following topics. First, the emerging AI landscape and what it means for the future of work, how leading organizations are putting humans at the center of AI transformation, looking beyond the automation of current processes to where AI combined with human intelligence can add new value, what organizations need to put in place in terms of skills, culture, and leadership to embrace a successful human-centered AI transformation, and we'll end with some practical tips for leaders to take away now to make an AI-powered future real. And along the way, as Laura said, we hope to also share thoughts on any related questions that you have in the audience, so please do send these in to us. So to discuss all of this, I'm delighted to be joined today by a panel of experts with plenty of hands-on AI experience. We'll now do some quick introductions across the panel, starting with you, Nina, if I may.
Hi, thank you, Adam, and it's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Nina Suri. I am the founder and CEO of Zopa AI. I've spent around 25 odd years after my engineering background to really use technology for the human selections and in the area of human recruitment. Fantastic to be here, Adam.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nina. Kumar, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Adam. And yeah, very, very glad to be here on this panel today as well. So I'm Kumar Subramanian. I'm Senior Director of Modeling and Analytics at Unilever R&D. And over the 25 plus years that I've been in Unilever, I've worked on a number of kind of product innovation areas, particularly for research and development. And over the last decade, have been increasingly involved in data analytics and digital transformation initiatives. I've led some of the company's more recent sort of AI solutioning work. And yeah, we're very happy to talk about some of our emerging thinking and learnings we've had on this topic today.
Thanks, Kumar. Looking forward to hearing more. Nairi, over to yourself.
Thank you, Adam. So I'm part of the PA consulting team, and my experience is all about leading complex and large-scale digital and AI change and transformation programs for our clients. So very much human-centered, where we're blending people's skills with technology, data, and AI solutions to really unlock greater ingenuity and accelerate time to value. I am a Woman in STEM Global Ambassador and a Woman in Tech 100 Award winner.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nairi. And last but not least, Alwyn, do you want to give yourself a quick introduction?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Alvin Magame. I'm a partner based here in London, and I lead our global AI practice, which is a team of about 250 or so very passionate colleagues in AI, where we help our clients do everything from developing AI strategies to implementing AI solutions. I have a 30-year career in consulting, and I really work in the intersection between technology and business transformation, and really passionate about how humans interact with machines, which I'm absolutely delighted to be part of the panel with Nina, Nairi, and Kumar discussing it. Outside PA, I'm a visiting professor at Imperial College, and we do a lot of work in digital transformation, especially developing new methods, means, and techniques about how enterprises can transform.
Thank you, Alwyn. And I wonder, to get the discussion started, Alwyn, do you mind unpacking for us a bit your definition of AI, talking a bit about the emerging AI landscape and how you see human-centered AI reshaping the future of work in the coming years?
Sure. I suppose if you step back from it all, we're undergoing, an evolution. In the 80s and the 90s, it was all about integrating the enterprise using software packages like SAP and Oracle. We integrated sales and marketing to finance, finance to operations, operations to supply chain. We spent time and effort integrating the enterprise. Then over the last 3 years, 24 years or so, it's been about digital. We adopted a digital-first mindset. We created omnichannel experiences. We use data for predictive insight. We use data, mobile, and cloud to create frictionless customer journeys. We say, hey, we're the digital enterprise. So the integrated enterprise became the digital enterprise. And then I suppose the question is, what's next? And in our view, what's next is what we call the intelligent enterprise, where everything you do will be powered by AI. Every business process will be augmented by AI. To what extent and what level will depend on the competitive nature of the industry you're in and the maturity of the company. But the intelligent enterprise is almost inevitable as AI becomes mainstream. So digital becomes intelligent. And in terms of, how that manifests itself in terms of human workflows, it's simply what I call the 3 A's. The first A is automated intelligence, where AI will automate a lot of tasks. An example being transcoding this session from voice to text. And so the challenge would be, if your job's predictable and repeatable, undoubtedly it will be taken over by an AI or a robot. So, I keep telling my clients, don't be a bad robot, because a real robot will take over your job. The second A is what we call augmented intelligence. How do we make humans more productive? And decision support tools and examples of those kind of tools that support humans become more productive and efficient would be the second A. And I'm sure Nina will cover this a bit later around how Exopa is using augmented and automated intelligence to really drive up productivity levels, right? And finally, the third A, because AI, has now moved into a landscape where it can comprehend. So if you think about AI systems being systems that can comprehend with large language models, additive intelligence would be the third A. And it allows the human to perform new tasks. It will abstract the complexity. When you say, hey, Siri, play me a song, it's a lot of complexity that goes into that instruction, right? But we just don't know, don't care, right? 10 seconds later, we get the song. So the 3 A's around automated intelligence, augmented intelligence, and finally additive intelligence is how I see AI really, accelerating, augmenting, or disrupting the human workflow. And all of this with the direction of travel that the digital enterprise today becomes the intelligent enterprise of tomorrow powered by AI.
Thank you, Al, for outlining that. I think it'll be interesting as we go through the discussion to reflect on within human-centered AI, how much, I think a lot of organizations and leaders are currently focused very much on the automating, right? The low-hanging fruit in the AI transformation and, that augmentation and additive capability that AI brings is really a key area here that we'll talk more about. I'd like to come to you now, Nina, in terms of being a founder of an AI-first technology company. I'd be really interested in your perspective on human-centered AI and AI in general. What are some of the most important elements to you that you think we should know about?
Yeah, we in Zopa, of course, we work directly on the human function, which is hiring and selection. So it's at the heartbeat of every human. I loved what Alvin just articulated about just slicing AI into these three buckets, and it's so true because we've already gone past the first generation of AI, which is automation. So things like if you're talking about things like scheduling interviews or, we've gone past that. So let's talk about the more interesting stuff, which is augmenting or even disrupting. If we specifically talk about recruitment, it's interesting how we now have AI becoming almost like a science. So hiring is no longer an art, it's become a science, right? So looking at job descriptions, which in itself is a big science, there used to be a time when we would just put in a job description. However, AI has taught us that there is a science behind the language, the words that you use. It will attract a certain population, a certain gender, or a certain ethnicity. So you want to make sure right from the very beginning, you have a job description which is inclusive, which writes the right language and attracts diverse populations so that you are getting the right applications. Skills. Much has been said about how future of hiring is going to be skill-based, and biases around schools and universities are going to be reduced to make it a much more playing field and really helping the underrepresented also become part, an active part of the workforce. So I think skills is going to be center of selections, whether it's recruitment, whether it's admissions in the colleges, or it's any area of job. So whether you're talking about professional hiring or frontline hiring or graduate, skills are going to be the center heartbeat. And I think a lot of work is being done around LLMs and skills taxonomy, where you don't just look at the skills of the individual, but you also look at the complementary skills. A lot of times companies do screen people out because, you don't know what you don't know, right? And this is where the third bracket, which Alvin talked about disruption, which is AI can tell us things we don't know what we don't know. So getting that outside in perspective and really being able to measure, skills versus complementary skills, skills today versus what are the skills required for tomorrow or for your promotion or for your next job. So I think that is going through a massive change. The core of decision making in recruitment is the interviews. Again, these used to happen in silos. You would have interviews one at a time. What AI now does is able to kind of first of all, automate and put all the interviews and everybody on the same platform, making it transparent for everyone, but then analyzing through cognitive intelligence, things like sentiments, text analytics around the words being spoken, whether the candidate looks at it glass half empty or half full, and so much of other cognitive intelligence. And then I think for me, the big win in recruitment with AI is the diversity inclusion, right? Because you can then decide that what are the areas that you want to take into consideration? Can you discard all the personal information, whether it's name or school or gender and so on, and only focus on things that matter? So, I can go on and on, but I think, the promise is huge.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dean. And I think there's a lot to unpack there, and I really love the deep dive there into AI for how it will transform the human resources function. And I'm sure if we have time, we'll have some questions we can discuss. Bias, I'm sure, is a key piece of that, and how AI can transform D&I. Kumar, as a final sort of third perspective, I guess, on human-centered AI and what we're talking about here, I'd love to hear your thoughts coming at it from the perspective of a large, complex, multinational organization, looking at transformation. what does human-centered AI mean for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So look, in my mind, in a fairly kind of simple sort of sense, human-centric AI is AI or machine intelligence that enables humans to do their job better, right? So it sort of goes to what Alvin and Nina were talking about, which is so if we look at everybody's jobs, jobs or roles consist of tasks, and there are some tasks which are repeated, labor intensive, and those are the ones that you can automate, and they fall under this bucket of automation as part of machine intelligence. And honestly, I think all of us would love machines to do that for us, right? So that we can focus on other stuff. And then there are parts of our jobs, or of every job, that is much more sort of creative, more sort of intellectually driven. And I think that is where I think AI is starting to have an impact, and that is where I think it's the machine and human sort of working together and being more effective than machine alone or human alone that is starting to become being expressed more and more in organizations. Yeah, and certainly at Unilever, I mean, that's kind of the experience we have. I'd like to illustrate this maybe with a couple of sort of examples. So years ago, when machine learning, particularly for image recognition, was becoming popular, there was a sentiment that things like medical image diagnostics or radiology, for example, would become obsolete, right? So radiologists would become obsolete because machines would do this. Yeah, this is 10 years ago. I mean, the state of the art today is, I mean, radiologists are still there. We haven't gotten rid of radiologists. But I think what is real, though, is that it's clear that radiologists who use AI to assist them are going to replace radiologists who don't use AI, right? That is the reality. So that really talks about how that sort of combination is where I think the power and the synergy lies, right? So the other example is, I mean, it's one of the projects that we have been working on within sort of Unilever, and then PA is one of our sort of lead partners on that project. So the whole idea here is how do we enable our R&D product, the product design folks in the R&D function within Unilever, with tools and information that allows them to design products that have a higher probability of success in the market. I mean, this is like holy grail for consumer product companies, and this involves bringing together large bits of product data, market data, consumer behavior data, data around sort of trends in scientific technology advances, yeah, and then being able to contextualize that data for the particular sort of innovation that the team is interested to drive, right? And so we actually created a prototype solution, and it involves automation in terms of bringing information together and providing that, and that's sort of the easy part. But that it also has an augmentation or an assistance sort of function where the teams are able to probe the system, ask it different questions, get answers, respond to it. Yeah. So it's that sort of, there's an interactivity and an assistance function. And the way we have sort of put this forth to the organization is it is actually an innovation assistant, right? So you treat it as a team member with a little bit of, extra superpowers that it can give you lots and lots of information that, maybe an individual cannot, but it's actually part of your team. So this system, AI system, is actually being positioned as part of the innovation team, doesn't replace anybody, but does a lot of different things that people would like to get done. And and I think the early feedback we are getting is actually quite positive. So that people like the fact that it's there, has a lot of information, takes away some of the mundane tasks that they would have to do otherwise, and is giving them some forward-looking sort of insights and information around how to design products.
Fantastic. Thanks, Guru, for that. So I think what we've heard so far, if I can quickly recap, I think we've got a view on sort of the three A's that Alan outlined, and the possibilities for AI to transform the workforce, in those different elements. We've heard a bit about, again, how AI can be used to actually transform the human resources function itself, and then you talked about I really liked transforming some of that from art into science, and how that's progressing, and then Kumar, you started bringing that to life, I think, really well, and it's a real life example of where this is being done. If we move a bit further into that example, if I may, in terms of Unilever, and maybe Naira, you can come in and talk to this. I think what a lot of people out there be asking, well, how do you successfully do this, right? What are some of those sort of change barriers to adoption here? So I'd be really interested to hear your experiences, with working with Kumar and the team there. for actually managing that.
Yeah, definitely. So, key to reimagining work with AI really requires organizations to embrace AI's potential and adapt and evolve with it. And as a starting point, it's important to define your strategic ambition for AI and have a clear definition of the intended value and impact to your organization and workforce. So whether it's leveraging Gen AI to improve efficiencies and productivity, or as Kumar mentioned, enabling R&D teams to design for product superiority, AI adoption requires mindset and behaviors that encompass continuous learning and a commitment to ethical and responsible use. In our Unilever program, we've mobilized an expert cross-capability team and designed a change management strategy targeted at driving adoption. In terms of kind of practical steps, we've embedded visible leadership to inspire others to embrace the change and explore the possibilities that AI presents. We've embedded an AI vision as the North Star and a really compelling narrative which explains the rationale and the key benefits that connect to what people actually care about. We've been communicating and engaging with stakeholders very early on and continuously to kind of drive early adoption. Collectively, we've identified pain points and opportunities, we've conducted pilots and facilitated a lot of experiential learning sessions so people kind of get hands-on. And including those impacted in the decision-making process and addressing their concerns has really helped us to kind of gain buy-in, commitment and ownership. Nina touched on upskilling. We've been doing that a lot for individuals and really try to ensure that the AI solution is empowering them by kind of enhancing their capabilities. And key to this has been providing them with control and understanding of the technology. So enabling them to understand how AI arrives at decisions or recommendations. And from a program perspective, we're continuously monitoring the impact and benefits realization, and we share success stories. There's the human element. What's going really well, what lessons can we share? And we really try to encourage ways of working that kind of adapts as the solution evolves. Ultimately collaborating with AI not only kind of augments efficiency, but it also creates that culture of creativity, problem solving and innovation. And I think on a final point, it's important to prioritize user needs and preferences when you're doing your design and development. And design AI systems that mitigate biases, ensure fairness in their decisions, and really uphold kind of user privacy and data security.
Thanks, Naira. I wonder, Kumar, if there's anything else you want to come in on there. I mean, for me, a lot of some of the bits you touched on, Naira, very much around making sure people trust, and a lot of concerns we already addressed at the start of this discussion. I mean, Kumar, is anything you want to add to what Naira just said?
Yeah, sure. I think So in a transformation program like this, and I think Naira is absolutely correct. I think we often underestimate the impact of the change, and therefore having proper sort of thinking around change management and how you drive adoption, I think is important, right? So when you think about AI systems or solutions, and the human considerations that come into this, what you really want is at the end of the day, you want to drive systems. You want systems that work and solve real problems and will be adopted, right? Because you can have systems that solve problems but don't get adoption, and I'll talk about some of the reasons for that in a minute. So you want to achieve both. And I think the way you try and do that is, you have to start, from a business problem that has a measurable impact value for the user group that you're targeting this for. And the reason this is important is because, in fact, I was reading just recently, AI in general, but I think, Gen AI in particular now, sometimes feel like a technology searching for problems, right? And it's fine. I mean, whenever you have new novel stuff, technology that comes in the market, you do go through that phase, a lot of experimentation and so on. But at the end of the day, to make real impact and to have kind of a scalable audience within organizations, you need to focus on the business problem. AI is one of the something in your toolkit that you can use to solve it. If it's appropriate, then you use it and you deploy it appropriately, right? So that's number one. Now, the thing with things like AI is, of course, then you have the issue of sort of trust, and therefore, that drives adoption. I think there are some mechanisms to kind of think about this. I mean, one of the frameworks that is becoming sort of more and more popular is the framework of responsible AI, that looks at things like, fairness, transparency, security, privacy, and ethics. Fairness meaning, is the data appropriate, right? Do we have bias in data, right? And these are the things the users are. So when I use an AI system and ask a question and get an answer, typically I'm not walking away believing it completely unless I know a little bit more about what's on the inside, right? So the fairness of data, transparency of the algorithms, and how the computation is done. We talked about privacy. We talk about security from a confidentiality sort of perspective, and ethics. I think is quite important, right? And one of the things I always talk about when I talk about ethics and AI is, I think as humans we are a lot more willing to excuse human errors, right? So when you talk about bias in data or bias in decision making, I mean, humans make biases in decision making. All of us come with different contexts and from different cultural backgrounds that largely govern our sort of actions and thinking. But we are able to accept and sort of forgive humans for making those errors, but we demand much more precision and much more accuracy in machines and and systems that we build. So I think we have to put that as a consideration as we build these systems, right? So that's the consideration of how do you think about the problems you want to solve with AI, and how do you make that kind of more sort of human centric. Then there's the element of how do you design and deploy them, right? And it goes to some of the things that Nairi was mentioning. I think you need a culture of experimentation, but you also need to engage the user group and build that trust early on, right? It's not sufficient if you build an absolutely first-rate, accurate system, and then suddenly spring it on a user group and say, yeah, now this is how you're going to make your decisions on your programs going forward. You need to get these folks and understand their pain points, use them to do the validation, show them impact, have some early success that they will then, carry forward. And then I think, I also like the automate, augment, and I think amplify, or you use a different terminology. Yeah, additive. Yeah. And I think, it's also useful to think about, taking AI programs through that phase. Yeah. So you start by putting AI where things can be automated because people resonate with that more easily, and then enhance those systems to augment, and then eventually, build in capability that amplifies. Because I think if you start with amplification, I think it can feel a bit sort of threatening, and therefore not get the same level of adoption and buy-in from the organization. So I think there are those layers of human considerations, both in terms of choosing projects and programs, but also how you implement, and finally, of course, how you sort of talk about these within organizations. Yeah, and I think they all have a place.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kim. And I think the users I'm hearing, user-centered design is a key element here. Strong change management, and I think the other bit I think we're touching on there is something around the accountabilities, right? Again, around AI, and I think we hear some people probably heard the term human in the loop. I wonder, Alan, is there more considerations you see from other organizations, how they're thinking about implementing AI, that other considerations that you think we should call out at this point?
Yeah, I think just building on what Kumar said, right, I really resonate with that, right? So I use the word FTRA, right? How can you build AI systems that are FTRA, right? And you pretty much, sort of explain that, Kumar, which is, fair, transparent, robust, and accurate, right? FTRA. So I think, because AI comes with issues like hallucination, even the best LLMs are still 97% accurate, 3% chance of hallucination. Humans in a loop will be critical. Right. The other thing to, I think, also keep in mind is that, for as long as computer systems have been around, let's say for the last 50 years or so, the underlying technology was a relational database, which means that the relationship between two pieces of data was a solid line, customer ID to customer name. And the way we interacted with these systems was through a form. So we filled in 5 bits of information and we got some output. And the output could be a report, a dashboard, whatever it is, right? But it's a form to a relational database. And that was the only way we could communicate with the machine, right? And so we built a whole industry around the relational database in terms of our interaction and the way we get output from the machine. But suddenly now in this world of LLMs, it's no longer a relational database. We don't need a customer name linked to a customer ID. In fact, we don't need a customer ID. It's a vector database. It's patterns and relationships between pieces of data. And the way we interact with these systems are now natural language. So the whole philosophy about how we interact, we're going to move from forms to natural language. So as we think about human-centric AI and how humans will operate, let's say in the intelligent enterprise, we need to embed natural language as part of the core workflow, right? And with that comes things like prompts and being skilled in prompts. And I would think that, being able to write a prompt well is like learning Excel. So we don't teach anybody to write Excel. We don't teach anybody to use Excel. But we're going to have to teach a whole population now to prompt well. Because if you prompt well, you get better results from a natural language LLM, right? So I think, the whole skills and enablement, the user interface by which we interact with the machine, and then how do we build systems that are FTRA, as Kumar said, I think will be all critical elements to this human-centered design.
Thanks, Alan. I think we've touching on skills. I think Nina, this is probably a great time to bring you in on this. And there was a question I think we received around, are attitudes more important than skills in the AI space? I wonder, what are your views in terms of the key skills people need in terms of this AI transformation?
Yeah, I think it's not all or nothing, right? Like you need both. You need to be able to do the job, but then you need to be able to do the job well and in a committed fashion. So I think both to that question, it is both important. There's a lot of interesting work being done around personas, where, just to give you an example, where, psychometrics, for example, with people who are familiar with psychometric testing, this is a one-dimensional test, right? Like it tests what are my leadership skills and what are my attitudes and stuff like that. However, what happens, I might perform amazingly well in a startup, but if you put me in a corporate, I'm going to completely bomb it, right? Like, so there's a lot of work being done also around attitudes and, attitudes that are relevant to certain industries, so that you don't just take the persona of the candidate, but you also take the persona of the hiring manager or the team that they're going to work with, so that the collective work output is amazing, both in terms of productivity and in terms of teamwork and so on. So yeah, I just wanted to digress on that question. But, I just want to touch upon that whole skill-based hiring, and, we're talking about skills. I think there is no doubt about the fact that going forward, we all have to commit to lifelong learning, right? Like, so what happens today may be redundant tomorrow. So, and I don't think it is just the onus on the companies. And I think this is going to come down to individuals, where the individuals will have to be proactive and keep abreast with all the technology and commit to that lifelong learning. And what the companies can do, of course, is to make sure that they give them the opportunity to practice or do experiential and kind of apply that knowledge in their organization, so they get both the value out of that, but also the recognition and a lot of other things come with that. So I think skills is going to be such a core part going forward, because when you commit to skill-based learning, you also commit to a lot of, overlooking a lot of other things. For example, bias-ridden things like, Ivy school versus non-Ivy schools, economic backgrounds, A city versus B city, and all of those other biases that creep in when you are hiring. So yeah, I think skills is going to be, in my view, very, very core to the whole hiring process.
That's it. And just to pick up, because I think that another question we received was to that point around universities and saying, oh, how is this AI? How do you be really interested in a second, if you can elaborate a little bit more on how do you approach mitigating that kind of bias? And while you prepare for that answer, obviously again reminder to everyone, please keep submitting your questions and we'll pick them up. But Nina, yeah, I'd be interested if there's anything more you can say about that around bias.
Yeah. Yeah, I think university is such an important starting step of somebody's career. So it's so important to get that right. If you notice, we do have a lot of issues around students being able to get in admissions, first of all. So there are companies who are piloting with us on things like, let's just completely ignore GPAs. A student may have the capability or the potential, but may not be the best exam writer or a best SAT scorer. So are we missing out, and are we screening out students for that purpose? So a lot of experimentation is now, universities are now being quite open-minded. It used to be such a closed environment. They've been quite open-minded about seeing capabilities, potential, and then it's not just about the potential, right? It's not just about the capability, but what about the preference of a student? I might be fantastic in mathematics, but I might also love music. So if you're then going to put me in something which can give me both of these benefits, you have committed to a worker who's going to be engaged and productive. So I think there's a lot of potential, and these are very, very difficult tasks to do with a human effort, right? You need to augment it with AI, and make sure that the outcome then is beneficial for all. The other example I would give, Adam, is in terms of benefits for the employers around hiring from various universities. Now, if you look at a typical campus hiring, you go into university 1, you pick up some students. You go to university 2, you pick up. Now with AI and kind of bringing everything onto a platform, you can now make sure that you create a common talent pool, and AI gives you the best outcome. And from the university point of view, it's not just about getting the jobs, but also making sure that not just a certain section of students get all the jobs. All your A GPAs or your 5 GPAs get Facebooks and the Microsofts and the PA consulting, whereas some students don't get any job. So also the optimization, so that you are making sure that every student gets an opportunity. Because you're going through that capability and compatibility model.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ian. I don't know, Alan, if there's anything else you wanted to come in on that point around AI and education more broadly.
Well, at the end of the day, right, there's a huge push to make AI more human-like. And with that, right, and if you think about humans, and I think just building on the point that Kumar mentioned earlier, humans exhibit the traits of AI, right? Humans hallucinate. Humans inevidently do things that are gray, that are right or wrong, inevidently or evidently. And we have tools to manage humans, right? It's called management. We have management, we have audit, we have risk, and we have these kind of governance frameworks to manage humans. And I think the same thing is going to happen with AI, right? So as governments, start to procure AI, companies start to procure AI, companies start to use AI, public listed companies start to use AI. So here's a prediction, right? So if you look back maybe 20, 25 years, you'd pick up an annual report of a company. There was hardly any mention of ESG, right? 20, 25 years. But today, you can't pick up a single annual report that doesn't have a whole section on ESG. And I think the same thing is going to happen next year, the year after, the year after. Companies are going to have to say where they use AI, how they use AI, and whether their AI is FTRA. Yeah. But in order for that to happen, you're going to have the right kind of governance, the right kind of framework, and the right kind of mechanisms put in place so that you can ensure that the AI you're using is fair, transparent, robust, and accurate, right? So I think this will come. This will come. It's inevitable, right, that this would come.
Yeah, and if I may just add, one thing from a perspective of how organizations should be looking at upskilling to be ready for this sort of AI revolution that's sort of happening. I think we have to look at it from two perspectives. One is there is we call this you got to raise the floor and raise the ceiling, and you got to do both at the same time, right? So you have, companies like us, have a fairly large entrenched workforce who we need to upskill on digital transformation, AI, teach them the governance rules. So we don't need to make them experts in coding, but we need to make them experts in evaluating and participating in the AI sort of culture and the solutions that are coming through. And then on the top of that, you need to, of course, bring the real sort of experts, the techies, let's say, to actually build the systems and to make sure that you as an organization are that you can stay at the leading edge of utilizing technology that's coming through in the organization. And I think that's probably the way to think about this. Yeah.
Thank you. See, one of the questions that we received was very much around accountability and governance. I think, Alwyn, Kumar, you've done a great job of covering some of that. Another question we received, which I think, Nina, I think might be directed your way, was around, when you talked about how AI can be used to understand and, enhance individual preferences, how do you use AI to enhance task distribution within teams that enhance overall team dynamics and effectiveness? I don't know if yourself or Nairi, if you have seen any of that yet, if we're still quite early. I know big tools like Microsoft Copilot coming out and being embedded across different teams and studies are being done, the future work report. But I wonder if any of you have a sense of how close are we to optimizing those team dynamics using some of these generative AI tools? Is that something that's coming soon, or are we a bit further away from that?
No, I think it's here. Obviously technology moves faster than adoption. So innovation moves faster than adoption. So I think it's already here. It's being piloted, it's being tested, and being deployed in quite a few. So I don't think it's a technology of tomorrow. I think it's a technology that is here already.
Yeah, and I think building on that, it's just demystifying what it is. There's all different types of AI, and this can be really scary for some people who don't live and breathe it. We've got generations who are just really AI savvy already, and we just need to bring everyone on that journey.
And kind of building on that, another question that's coming, which is always a pointed question, and it was directed towards your way, Alwyn, but obviously I'm opening the floor. But talking about AI and performance reward, which is obviously going to be a key question. If we're automating tasks, if we're augmenting people and their productivity is in some cases in the multiple X's, who benefits from that? Is it the employee? Is it the company? How do we manage that? And again, I'd be very interested, Alwyn, Kumar, perhaps in early stage Unilever, what are your early thoughts on that?
Well, as a consulting firm, right, our philosophy around AI is not artificial intelligence, right? It's augmented intelligence. We're really about augmenting the consultant. And so when it comes down to, to reward and performance, exactly as Nina said, right? The ability for a human to take a holistic view is actually quite hard, yeah. But the ability for a machine to do that is much easier. So I suppose the question is, how do you get the best of both worlds, right? How do you get the best of the augmentation capability of AI? And then how do you get the best of, the human judgment that basically says, I'm going to lean forward for this particular person because I believe that strategically we need that kind of skills more than what the data is shown on a Excel spreadsheet. Yeah. So I think, augmenting will certainly help remove some of, let's say, the subjectiveness from these kind of processes where a lot of judgment's required. Yeah.
And certainly, I know year-end consulting processes have a lot of, as you said, language information that LLMs will be very interesting and good at passing, hopefully. Kumar, did you want to come in on that as well?
Yeah, maybe a couple of points. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I wonder whether in the future AI assistants will actually make the list of be part of your employee list who you give a performance rating for. Yeah, I mean, I think it's speculative. But what I think there was a very nice analysis I came across recently where they look at today's jobs, and jobs consist of tasks, right? So every job has maybe 6 to 12 sort of tasks. And if you do a deep analysis, what you find is there are very few for which you would say over 80-90% can be done by AI today. There's probably somewhere in the vicinity of sort of 30 to 50% of tasks can be hopefully replaced by AI today, but the other 50% are still there. So I think we're still reasonably far away from significant roles being completely sort of consumed away by AI. But I think but even this sort of replacement or augmentation of the 30-50% leads us to think about we'll have to think about roles differently. So the human jobs or the human roles will need to be, thought about differently, right? Where, I guess, for example, working with AI solutions is part of your role now, and therefore, I guess your reward structure is therefore tied to, utilizing, solutions or AI systems in the future. So rather than it, sort of replacing, I think we need to look maybe a step behind to say the roles will change. The roles that humans would do would change, and therefore, I think, of course, the reward systems and the performance, evaluations will evolve in line with that.
Because ultimately, there is a fear that AI will take your job, yeah. And you hear that being permeated over and over again. AI will take your job. I'll argue that AI won't take your job. It will take your task. Because ultimately, what is a job? It's a bag of tasks, right?
Yeah.
So if in your bag, if there are tasks that can be automated by AI, it will happen.
Yeah.
So what will happen then is that you will either put in tasks that cannot be automated, or your job will get redefined.
Exactly.
So I think, if you cast your mind back, and maybe, some folks on this call, I'm just showing my age. When Lotus 1-2-3, which is a precursor for Excel, was introduced into the workplace, it was a big deal. We predicted the accountants will all be out of work because of Lotus 1-2-3. That never really happened. We trained people. We talked about Lotus 1-2-3 in the organization. There were some companies that had it and some companies that didn't. And now it's just normalized, yeah. So because we adapted and we changed jobs to fit the technology, and I think that's what will happen as well, right? As we go forward. So AI will take your task, not your job.
Yeah. So you're right. I think the horizons will keep moving further away, right? I think we'll do, humans will, aspire to do bigger and better things as some of the more, laborious tasks get taken over by the machine. So.
Fantastic. And kind of moving on a bit towards, I guess, kind of advice, to take this forward to leaders today. I'd be very interested, I think we're starting to touch on some of these key points of things to think about. I guess, maybe Nairi, if I start with you, if that's okay, is there any advice that you'd give to leaders looking to embrace AI in their organization this year? Where would you advise them to start?
Yeah, so I think that leaders really need to have a well-defined strategic AI vision, and they should really mobilize an expert team to kind of bring this to life. Really prioritizing the management of AI's impact and readiness on their workforce. So, by upskilling employees, optimizing talent, and integrating AI, leaders can establish, new ways of working, enhance productivity, and really develop future capabilities. And I think it's crucial to harness the power of people in the right way to drive change and really create new opportunities because, I feel that ultimately success depends on hearts and minds.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nairi. Kumar, can I go to you? Any other further thoughts you have in terms of advice, leaders like yourself should take away in terms of AI transformation and that human-centered element of it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So this is from the experience we've had so far, right? And, recognizing that it's still evolving and, we're all sort of learning. But a few points. One is, like Nina said, this is real. It's here and now. So, jump on the bandwagon, start experimenting. I think it's important because otherwise you're going to be left behind. I would say initially choose projects that have high business impact. Get some success under your belt and stakeholder support thereby. I would say choose projects which are data rich initially because again, one of the things you hear often is one of the banes of a lot of AI projects is, and the reason they don't go from pilot to scale is because there is not sufficient data across the system. Yeah, so you'll have data to do a proof of concept, but then you get stuck. So also choose areas where you think there is sufficient data for you to be able to scale. And then sort of echoing what Nairi has said through the course of this conversation. I think keep the users in the middle of everything. They need to walk the project with you. Keep them engaged in the design of the not just the user interface but also of the solution. Have them involved in the validation along the way, and I think that usually will ensure that you'll have success and adoption of the solutions you create.
Yeah, and just building that quickly, Kumar, if I may, there's a question that came in, which is really interesting, which again, I want to probably come in on as well around the key success measures that you look at around an AI solution and to make it sure it's worthwhile investing in, and also what role employees play in these measures. We just talked about obviously the need to involve employees, but I wonder, Kumar, is anything around the employee feedback or anything that you're looking at around the AI solutions that you've implemented that you think is important to recognise here?
Yeah, so 2 points. One is, yes, I mean, I think particularly the early, as I said, in the early phase, keeping the users, close by, and sort of collecting feedback and implementing that in a fairly tight and responsive loop, I think is important before you can scale. What we've also found is having these early successes and early adopters almost becoming the ambassadors within the organization, I think helps. Now, the other thing I did want to mention was also look at these as, like we've discussed, there's probably two kinds of AI programs you have. One is, that improves the operational effectiveness. Now, those are somewhat easier to sell through organizations because the benefit is sort of, realizable in the shorter term. But then you also have these slightly longer term strategic projects that generate sort of more growth, but it's over a longer period of time. And it's important to distinguish because oftentimes the stakeholders and the folks you need to influence on these projects are different as well. So also take a view early on what is your project primarily delivering? Is it sort of short term operational effectiveness value? And I'm not diminishing the importance of that. I think there's huge untapped potential in that space. And then but I think where it's eventually going to add value is in kind of longer term strategic growth opportunities that companies can unlock as they put these systems together.
And I think that the measures don't change, right? There are just three. You can have many measures, but they can all be classified into three buckets, right? Can I grow revenue? Can I reduce cost to serve? Or can I get a better return on investor capital? And it's as simple as that, right? So no matter how complex the problem is, if you can distill it down to these three measures, I think you're in a good state, right? What we also find is that a lot of the excitement around AI is saying, hey, if you give me this, I can be so much more productive and efficient. But there's actually a real cost with deploying the solution, a total cost of ownership. And if that cost outweighs the productivity and efficiency, then why do it? Right? Or if there's another solution, then why do it? So a TCO analysis is actually quite key to ensuring that your use case for AI can actually stand up to these three measures. We find actually half the use cases for generative AI just fall apart when you do a proper TCO analysis, right? When you have to put human in the loop, that human is expensive, right? Because that's a human with expertise, right? So taking a holistic TCO view against use cases, I think is key against these three measures, right? Ultimately, will tell you whether what I simply call is the juice worth the squeeze, right?
Fantastic. Thanks, Alan. Anything else in terms of advice to leaders that you would like to give in terms of anyone looking to start now, as on top of the TCO analysis you just mentioned?
Well, I think ultimately, right, you want to have a clear North Star, which is what I call think big, right? So I'm digital today. I want to become intelligent tomorrow. Think big. That's my future direction of travel. I'm not going to get there in one step. It maybe take a couple of horizons or a couple of waves, but think big. But then start really small, right? Get your feet wet, as Kumar said. Start really small so that you understand, you appreciate, you build skills, you build knowledge. Start small and pick the right use cases so you demonstrate success quickly. And then scale fast. So think big, start small, scale fast would be my advice. Yeah.
Brilliant. And Nina, last but not least, any advice that you'd give to aspiring leaders in the AI transformation space this year?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest mantra would be commit to bias-free hiring. Give opportunities. And there are tools out there. So ensure whatever you deploy are committed to ethical AI. Anything that they do or suggest or give decisions, make sure it's transparent, explainable, and tells you why it is doing what it's doing. So, really hold your vendors accountable. Like you said, start small. Ensure you ask for a pilot. Do a small POC before you jump in full-fledged. So be convinced that this is the tool that you are going to be and then hang in there with that vendor once you've made that decision, because AI gives you returns over a period of time. So.
Fantastic. Well, I'd like to thank the panel very much for all your thoughts. And, I think we've obviously scratched the surface in what is a highly complex issue, and could be talking all day about human-centered AI. Hopefully, we've given everyone a bit of a taste of some of the key discussions and elements of it. And I'm sure the panel, if anyone has any follow-up questions that we didn't get a chance to address today, I'm sure we can be directed to the relevant person for follow-ups. Without any further ado, Laura, shall I hand back to you then to close us out?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thanks so much. That brings us to the close of our event. Adam and panelists, it was, needless to say, really interesting just hearing about the importance and impact of human-centered AI, and what organisations really need to do to embrace it in the future. And thanks everyone for joining us today. Watch out for our next event. So that will be focusing on developing an organisation-wide EDI culture. And then you can also explore our insights in creating people-centric organisations too. So just by a quick scan of that QR code. And we'll leave it there. Thank you very much.